Well, Tom advised me to start out with a question, who are you and what are you doing here? But I think we found out who he is in that generous introduction. Siebel Systems is one of the great startups, fastest growing startups in the 1990s. But tell us about where you are now and what motivated you to do C3 IoT.
Okay. I'm a computer scientist from the University of Illinois. I did my graduate work in relational database theory. Went to work for a startup company in Menlo Park with a young entrepreneur by the name of Larry Ellison. Turned out to be a pretty good decision. 10 years later, we worked on the application of information technology and communication technology to the business processes of sales, marketing, customer service in the form of Siebel Systems, and we invented this market that you know of today as CRM. Now, for the last 9 years, if we look at the 21st century, you know, the big vectors in information technology that I think are changing everything relate to elastic cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things. So we've spent the last 9 years building a technology platform that we provide typically to $30 to $400 billion organizations to enable them to design, develop, provision, operate these enterprise-scale AI applications that change the way that they design products, manufacture products, deliver products, and manage their businesses.
Well, you can't help but go to a conference like this or any technology conference today, and everybody and his brother and sister are talking about how they too are playing in the AI space, the IoT space, the big data space. What is it that you're doing at C3 IoT that is different, and why do you think it's sustainable and a platform for growth?
Well, it's a big market. So let's think back. When I went to work for Oracle in 1983, the worldwide market for information technology might have been $200 billion. Today it's $2 trillion. In 5 years, it'll be $8 trillion. So it's accelerating at a very rapid rate. The market, the software market for basically big data, AI, and IoT applications alone, just the software market, is expected to be $250 billion marketplace by 2023. So nobody's ever seen a market, never seen a growth segment like this. This is huge. So there will be lots of companies in this space. And when you're in kind of a raging, non-rational bull market like you are today, and the cost of capital is free, you'll have lots and lots and lots of companies that'll appear to be viable. When the music stops, like we know it all will, then it'll sort out. There will be, fewer of these companies will be in the business, but the business will be there. It will be big, and it will be important.
Well, there's an interesting landscape that's emerging where you have old industrial companies like Siemens and GE claiming to be in this space. You have older technology companies like IBM in this space. You have the big cloud platforms of AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud. And then you have a lot of startups, many of them whom, like yours, or at least a handful like yours, have already reached unicorn status in the valuations. How is that going to play out? Not everybody's going to be a winner in that space.
Well, it's not unusual that when we see these transitions, be it to mini computer technology or personal computer technology or the internet or relational database technology, that the obvious juggernaut doesn't take the cake. I mean, how did IBM miss the personal computer operating system market? I mean, really? Okay, how did digital computer miss the idea of the Ethernet, of connected devices? Pretty big miss. So you have this innovator's dilemmas problem where, companies just, how did Siebel ever compete against the likes of Oracle, Microsoft, and SAP in creating the CRM software market? We had 65% market share worldwide. So there is this innovator's dilemma where new companies with new DNA seem to solve these new problems. In the case of GE, Jeff woke up one day. He was running, what was perceived of, I think, as the world's greatest 19th century industrial company. And he woke up one morning and decided that GE was the world's greatest 21st century information technology company. Well, that didn't work out so well. And I'm not even sure that GE at this point is an ongoing concern. So I believe that we are a relatively small company, but I believe C3 IoT today is the world's leading provider of big data, IoT, and AI solutions at global scale.
You use the phrase platform as a service, building on the phrase software as a service. What do you mean by platform as a service?
Well, when we were in the old days, like at Oracle, with Larry Ellison and Sohaib Abbasi and others, we used to we'd have development tools that would allow people to design, develop, provision, and operate enterprise applications that would run on premise. We called those development tools. When you put those development tools in a cloud, when they run on the AWS Elastic Cloud, or they run on Azure, or run on the Google Cloud, that tends to be called a platform as a service, where you can not only you develop them in the cloud, in a common instance in the cloud, but then this platform as a service also serves as a kind of massively horizontally scalable platform for operating these applications that require exceptionally large storage requirements and the acquisition of massive data volumes and the ability to horizontally scale to tens of thousands of computers to basically solve these problems by massively parallel processing.
You founded what is
so
now...
Anyhow, at bottom, sorry, to finish the answer, that is what a platform as a service is.
Okay. And you founded C3 IoT as C3 in your third company, I presume, the C and the 3. Was that it?
Actually, we were originally focused on energy markets, and so we wanted to make it originally began as a philanthropic effort, and where we convened about 50 experts around the world and spent the bulk of 2008 thinking about information technology, communication technology, environmental issues, carbon issues, energy production issues, and the idea was to try to find a way to have a significant impact on the energy dialogue at global scale. And these were people that we assembled from McKinsey, from Intel, Oracle, Siebel, SAP, Juniper Networks, the energy team from McKinsey and Company, and others. And by the time we got to the end of the year, it became apparent that the way to have the most impact was not through a philanthropic effort, but it was through a private sector response. So C3 was originally about addressing the energy equation, the grid at global scale, and C3 stood for the carbon atom, and we were talking about measuring, mitigating, and monetizing carbon and the associated greenhouse gases.
Well, I stand corrected in my assumption then about the origin of the name.
So then we later, after we did a pretty good job of tackling the utility market, companies like Exelon, Con Ed, Baltimore Gas and Electric, ENGIE in Paris, Enel in Rome. And then basically the problem we were solving was big data, IoT, and AI for the energy grid, which is a very complex use case. And it became apparent that what we built could be used for any use case. So in February of 2016, we rebranded the company as C3 IoT and applied the same technology stack to aerospace, healthcare, discrete manufacturing, telecommunications. Our business that year grew by 600%. So it was a pretty good decision. And now we're solving the same class of problems for everything from defense, aerospace, and consumer packaged goods.
Well, defense and aerospace, speak of that because you landed a really exciting contract that itself is a door opener to a lot of adjacent spaces. Describe the aerospace contract you landed in the fall.
Yeah, one of the larger contracts we have is to do AI-based predictive maintenance for the United States Air Force. Well, that's a pretty large project. So this would be 5,000 aircraft, 39 different platforms, beginning with the E3 Sentry, that's the AWACS. The next is the C5 Hercules. Then we go to the F-15, F-16, E-35 Joint Strike Fighter. And so what we do is we gather all of the telemetry, all of the text data, all of the maintenance logs, all of the flight history, and all of the telemetry as they are generated in real time. And we aggregate these data into a unified federated image and build deep learning models and machine learning models, and to be able to identify device failure and system failure in advance so that the system will deploy. And some of these platforms, this is public knowledge, and I won't mention, it is not classified information, but some of these platforms that are critically important to national security, at any given day, 40% of them will not deploy. So actually, some of them, 75% of them will not deploy. So it's a critical issue, and so the economics of this are staggering. We could potentially, double the throw weight of the United States Air Force for a cost less than building one Joint Strike Fighter.
Well, and that led to ripple effects because that got the attention of Boeing, and now Boeing is a customer of yours.
We're very big in aerospace. We're big in, discrete manufacturing. We're big in now healthcare. And so it's fascinating. Healthcare will be by far the largest market, precision medicine. So if we aggregate, say, the healthcare records for order, we did in one case in the United States, we aggregated the healthcare records for 125 million people, radiology, pharmacology, hematology, healthcare history, and you aggregate those data into a unified federated image, and given a history of true positives being who had the disease in the past, you can build machine learning classifiers that are incredibly precise in telling them who will come down with name the disease in the next 5 years, save diabetes. You can do this with order of 90% precision. The idea being you can deal with these people clinically in the next 5 years rather than in the operating room in 5 years. And the economics and social implications of that are very compelling.
You spent quite a bit of time really getting what you do right. You put in, I believe, about $250 million in investing in the technology, and you didn't rush. You took some number of years to get it right by your definition. What do you think you got right that other people in the IoT space haven't figured out?
We have a platform that enables organizations in the aerospace business, the defense business, the oil and gas business, the utility business, the healthcare business, the consumer packaged goods business, discrete manufacturing business, to rapidly design, develop, provision, and operate applications that transform their enterprises. I'm talking about John Deere, Caterpillar Tractor, 3M, organizations like this. And we did it with using the next generation of programming that you can think of that's called a model-driven architecture. Everybody who's trying to solve this is using a methodology for application development that was developed in the mid-'60s. That's pretty much the state of the art today. It's called structured programming. And we did something called a model-driven architecture where we have all of these kind of unique objects that we just aggregate together to solve certain problems, and we can solve them very rapidly. So the bottom line is we have reduced the complexity of the problem from about 10 to the, if you try to solve this problem using structured programming, the level of complexity, we could get into it sometime when we have more time, is about 10 to the 13th. Well, it's hard to grok 10 to the 13th if you're a data scientist or a programmer. And using our technology that we've patented, the level of complexity is about 10 to the 3rd, which a mere mortal can deal with that. Even I can grasp that. So this is a key differentiating factor why IBM is into this for about $15 billion, and if they have anything, it's not apparent. GE's into this for about $7 billion in investment, and if they've accomplished anything, it's not apparent to the world. And so it's, for whatever reason, we have a product that works.
Now, when you one of your key suppliers is AWS. There are if you look at the big three, there's Microsoft Azure, there's Google Cloud, and then there are IBM's in this, and Oracle is in this, and Salesforce and others too. But why AWS? And do you spend any time worrying that if you really have a hockey stick-like growth, and I guess 600% growth in 2 years that's sort of what it is, that may get their attention in a negative way and say, we want that?
Well, we partner with AWS in a big way. We partner with Microsoft. We partner with Google. So what they have done is they're developing primitives, okay? Primitives like ML tools, something like AWS IoT. It's not a platform for IoT. It's a utility for device connection. So they're developing all these primitives that you can aggregate together. And what we've built is something called a type system, which is this which you can think of as an abstraction layer, which sits on top of everything that they do and leverages what they do to enable people to design, develop, provision, and operate these applications. So today, for example, I mean, we sell very actively with AWS. 3,000 AWS. There are 3,000 AWS salespeople in the world, and they all get commission credit when our product is sold on their platform. So they might appear to be competitive if you look at it from a distance, but they're entirely uncompetitive situations.
Since the last excellent session with Brian and Mike talked about culture, talk about the C3 IoT culture, and maybe specifically talk about the cultural differences, that which you brought forward from Oracle and Siebel Systems, and that which you've changed. How are you like Oracle and Siebel Systems, and how are you different as a culture?
There's a website that you might be familiar with called Glassdoor.com, where employees go on and anonymously talk about their companies and rank their companies. And if you look at it, you'll see that C3 IoT is rated as, if not one of the greatest places to work in America. And so we focus a lot on culture. And I think that, running a business is about, it's a human capital game. It's about attracting, motivating, and getting a group of talented human capital to work in concert to solve a difficult problem. I'd say that problem is much more complex today than it used to be. So when we were doing Oracle in the 80s or Siebel in the 90s, it was easy. You were dealing with baby boomers, and baby boomers are pretty easy to motivate. I know we all learned in business school about Maslow's hierarchy of needs being what motivates people, food, sex, and all that. But we all know that's not really true. Okay, what really motivates baby boomers is the comp plan. Okay, you write the compensation plan, and that's what they do. Now they, now it's not 1983, and it's not 1993. It's 2018, and this workforce today is a very rich tapestry of baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, millennials. They all have different backgrounds, different motivations, different reasons for wanting to work, different work ethics, different value systems. And so it's a very rich tapestry that you need to be able to weave together to take a group like that and get them to operate as a high-performance team to get the job done. And I think, so today, rather than managing through the comp plan, you need to manage through culture. And you need to find those values that these people have in common, and then, get them to take the hill.
And if you walk around C3 IoT, as I've done a number of times, you're really impressed with many forms of diversity, including something you don't often see in Silicon Valley, which is the age diversity, where there are people you've worked with since Oracle in the 80s, people you've worked with since Siebel in the 90s, and then all these young faces too. In the concluding minutes here, I know you've been asked about this, but it's such a fascinating personal story. And Jamie put me up to this, so I'm going to blame Jamie. Not long after you started Siebel Systems in the 90s, I think 93, I believe, you were kicked in the head by a horse and pretty severely hurt and incapacitated. And then not long after you started C3 IoT in 2009, you were stomped on and gored by an elephant in a photo safari, lost 80% of your body fluids, had almost 20 surgeries since. So my question is that a requirement when you start a company? that you have to be? Is there something that triggers, that extra adrenaline after being, almost mortally wounded?
Well, it doesn't make it any easier. And I do remember it was 1995 when I was kind of severely injured in an equestrian accident. I woke up in the intensive care unit, and the prognosis was permanent irreparable brain damage, which I think probably turned out to be true. And so that was a little bit of a bump in the road that we needed to get over to build Siebel. But a year later, we were operating a public company that I think we went public at about a $500 million valuation, and 6 years later, it had a $50 billion valuation. For those who got involved, it was a pretty good trade. Let's see, we started this company in January of 2009. In August 1st, 2009, I was attacked and mauled by an elephant in Tanzania, and which was an experience that I do not recommend. And I was gored and punched, and the elephant stepped on my leg, and my right foot came off. And so the next 3.5 years were pretty long. And I had 19 reconstructive surgeries. I walked 4 years later, and we built a company in the midst of that. A lot of that I was in an electric wheelchair, and so it was a character building experience that I don't recommend, but it's nice to have it behind us. Yeah, it does change your perception of risk in funny ways, and the way that you deal with issues, and the way that the relative importance of things that we run into every day in our business lives or personal lives that might appear to be very important, but we know that they're really not very important at all.
To the degree, the last question, to the degree you can answer this, we just heard a great model of Vista private equity, almost a Berkshire Hathaway, apart from not being public. Berkshire-like in its collection of companies with synergies. Is your intention with C3 IoT to stay private or to have a liquidity event of one kind or the other?
That's a good question, Rich. And, I can remember at Siebel and at Oracle, people would come in for interviews and they would always ask, what's the exit strategy? And I never knew how to answer the question because there never was an exit strategy. And there still isn't an exit strategy. I mean, we're here to build a great company. We're here to establish a clear market. Our goal, like we did at Oracle, like we did at Siebel, is to establish and maintain a market leadership position worldwide. Leave a large group of satisfied customers in our wake and build a great place to work. While doing so, we want to be building a rapidly growing, cash positive, profitable business. If we do that, we'll create value. And, so I don't really think about, there is no exit strategy. We're here to build a great company, and that's what we're doing. And I think in the process, we'll create value.
Well, let's give Tom a big hand.